Welcome to A-Line TV. My name is John Kelvin, and today we're going to discuss how to change your guide pin bushings and your guide pins on the ADB 22X caliper or the Knorr-Bremse SK7 caliper. Now, we're going to do that using a new innovative patent-pending invention called the A-Line CL20 kit. This is a continuous lubrication kit that will allow you to lubricate your guide pins on an ongoing basis so you don't suffer lubrication starvation. This is used in connection with A-Line's patented MaxiSil 998 silicone Teflon grease. Now, why this is important to change your bushing kits is because caliper slide is absolutely necessary that you have your caliper sliding on your carrier nice and evenly so that you get good clamping force. Clamping force means brake force. Your lead guide pin or your long guide pin is what absorbs all of your rotational force of your caliper. It should slide nice and easily like this. But all too often, we find guide pins and calipers that look like this one. They just don't move. So today we're going to change the guide pins. For this, you want to have gloves because you're going to be using a silicone grease. Don't get this on your skin. You'll also be using safety goggles. To take apart your caliper, we're going to be using a Ken Tool Kit 80,000. And this will give you all the tools necessary to extract the bushings and reinstall the bushings. So, let's see how it's done. Your A-Line CL20 kit includes one brass long guide pin bushing, one steel short guide pin bushing, one grooved long guide pin, one grooved short guide pin, one long guide pin cap, one short guide pin cap, one aluminum plug, two hydraulic stop valves, two guide pin boots, two plastic retainer rings, one long guide pin bolt, one short guide pin bolt, and two grease packs not pictured here. Before we start, make sure that you're using rubber gloves, as you will be Using a 1/4-inch metal chisel and ball peen hammer, remove the metal tab from the short floating guide pin as shown. Then use a magnet to extract any remaining metal debris from the bore. Assemble the Ken tool as shown using the KT13 long bolt, washer, KT21 half sleeve, and brass nut. Generously grease the long bolt, and be sure to keep the grooves in the tool aligned with the grooves in the casting. Assemble the Ken tool as shown using the KT13 long bolt, washer, KT12 long sleeve, and brass nut. Generously grease the long bolt and use 124mm wrench to hold the brass nut in place, while applying force with the impact gun. When the bushing spins freely, it is fully extracted. Completely clean both bushing bores. Be careful when using abrasives on the bore. This can ruin the caliper. First, align the seam on the short guide pin bushing with the seam on the casting as shown. Then, assemble the Ken tool, KT10 short bolt, washer, KT06 1.5 inch diameter disc, KT05 1 3/8 inch diameter disc, KT08 2 1/8 inch diameter disc, bushing, and brass nut as shown. Applying hand pressure only, use the 24mm wrenches to draw the bushing into the bore until it bottoms out. Use a metal punch to bend the bushing tab into position. Assemble the KT13 long bolt, washer, KT08 2 1/8 inch diameter disc, brass bushing, and KT14 brass nut as shown. Hold the brass nut with a 24mm wrench while using the 24mm socket to draw the bushing into the bore. Draw until the brass nut is 1 mm from the housing as shown. Insert the KT16 dimpling tool into the brass bushing as shown. With a 24mm wrench, rotate the set nut clockwise until it can no longer extend. This engages the 3 dimplers. Then, rotate counterclockwise until the dimplers are disengaged. Clock the KT16 tool 60 degrees and re-engage the dimplers as before. When finished, you will see 6 dimples in the bushing. Into this little device here. And you have to make sure to put all the little folds in here. If you don't get all the folds in there, then when you try to use it, it will tear the boot. So make sure it's entirely in until the lip is sealed tight to the top of the tool. Now you're ready for your boot installation. So using your short bolt, you're going to take your KT06 followed by your KT08 and then this big sucker. Okay, now we're going to put those in there. We're going to thread this onto the long bolt. It's a good job for retirees if you have plenty of time on your hands. Test the boot by gently pulling it to make sure it is sealed to the caliper. We're going to draw that in until we just feel some resistance. You may want to have a 26mm wrench to hold that in place so it doesn't move. We're going to fill this completely with grease, filling all the dimples and eliminating any air. Use only A-Line Maxisil 998 specially blended silicone Teflon grease that is designed for air disc calipers. Do not mix with other lubricants. As shown in these test videos, Maxisil outperforms aftermarket and OE competitors. At 140 degrees Celsius, the aftermarket grease begins to degrade. At 212 degrees C, the OE grease begins to degrade. At 225 degrees C, the OE is now liquefied. At 270 degrees, both competitors are turning to tar. Maxisil remains untouched. Finally, at 310 degrees C, Maxisil shows some signs of degradation, but look at the competitors. As temperatures continue to rise to 400, 450, and 500 degrees Celsius, we see the competitors have no lubrication value, while Maxisil 998 continues to provide lubricity. At 539 degrees Celsius or 998 degrees Fahrenheit, Maxisil reaches its limits, far outperforming the competition. Grease both pins, completely filling all grooves. Fit the lip of the boot into the pin groove. When applying the plastic ring, put the flat side facing outward. Using your 14mm hex driver bit, reassemble the caliper as shown. The caliper must be properly torqued. Use a torque wrench and set each bolt to an initial torque of 133 foot-pounds. Then add a 90-degree turn. It is helpful to test the slide action of the caliper after this procedure. If it does not slide easily, re-torque until the caliper slides easily. Grease the aluminum lubrication plug and insert it into the long guide pin with the hole facing out. This will make removal easier on future applications. Before installing the guide pin caps, be sure the caliper is compressed and the boots are collapsed. For the short guide pin cap, which has a deep profile, use the KT27 cap install tool only. Seat over the guide pin and install with hammer as shown until the cap bottoms out. The long guide pin cap, which has a shallow profile, must use the KT26 cap install tool. Again, use the ball peen hammer and install as shown. Once the cap is installed, screw in your hydraulic stop valves as shown. Use a wrench to tighten, but be careful not to over-tighten. Expand the caliper and inspect the boots. They should look vacuum sealed to the pin. This shows no air or moisture leaks exist. If the caliper was not compressed when caps were installed, then the boots will be bloated. You can exhaust the bloating by removing the valve, placing your finger over the hole while compressing and expanding the caliper. This will pump the air out. When the boot has the vacuum look, compress the caliper and reinstall the valve. When adding grease, only add until the pop-up valve activates as shown. The hydraulic stop valve works by allowing grease to be administered into the pin assembly. It flows into the grooves until it reaches the grease dam and then builds a back pressure that opens the pop-up valve. Any additional grease is then funneled out of the valve. This should prevent overgreasing. Overgreasing can occur if the caliper does not remain compressed and expands instead of creating back pressure. If this happens, remove the valve, compress the caliper, and flush excess grease from the pin assembly. Then reinstall the valve. Your caliper is complete. Time to hit the road.